Welcome to the Fibromyalgia Podcast. I'm your coach, Tami Stackelhouse, and this is episode 108. Today, I interview filmmaker Nick Demos about his feature documentary on fibromyalgia titled Invisible. We are taking a peek behind the curtain with the director and star of the film. In addition to talking about the film, Nick shares his own personal journey with fibromyalgia. From it being something his mom had, but he didn't really understand, to being something much, much more personal. Nick and I have been waiting years to do this interview. Ever since we began working on the film 8 years ago, a lot of it was kept secret. We didn't want to give away the ending until people could watch the story unfold in the film. Today, we finally get to talk about it publicly. If you haven't watched the film, I do encourage you to do so. It truly is the fibromyalgia documentary our community has been wanting and needing. If you're listening to this episode in May 2023, we do have 2 special opportunities for you to see the film. If you're listening after that date, check your streaming services. It will eventually be available on all the major streaming platforms. First, Dr. Ginevra and I are hosting the West Coast premiere of Invisible on Saturday, May 13th at the 5th Avenue Cinema in Portland, Oregon. We are so excited to be holding an in-person Fibromyalgia Awareness Day celebration and cannot wait to hug you. We will be watching the film on the big screen and we'll have a Q&A meet and greet with the filmmakers following the film. Nick will be there along with Rose, Dr. Ginevra, and myself. As of recording this, we do have a few tickets left, but they are going quickly. So go to invisiblefilmpdx.com to buy your tickets. If you can't make it to Portland or if we've sold out, no worries. We are also hosting a virtual screening of the film the next weekend on Saturday, May 20th. This will be a group watch party with a live chat during the film and a special Q&A after with Dr. Ginevra and myself. There will be a link in today's show notes where you can buy tickets for the virtual screening. Just go to fibromyalgiapodcast.com/108. Now, let me introduce you to my guest. Nick Demos is a Tony Award-winning Broadway producer, documentary filmmaker, conscious business coach, and manifestation expert. With over 15 years of teaching pranayama, breathwork, yoga, and creativity, as well as 30 years in the entertainment industry, Nick has traveled from the Tony Awards to ashrams and run a multi-million-dollar business in between. As a coach, Nick guides you to clear blocks and tap into your creative intuition so you can be unapologetically visible and manifest while making monumental impact. We will have links where you can connect with Nick on today's show notes page. Just go to fibromyalgiapodcast.com/108. Hi, Nick. Welcome to the podcast. We've only been trying to have this interview for 8 years, so I'm excited you're here.
Tami, I am. When I say that I'm excited to be here, it's like beyond that because it is 8 years in the making. This moment.
Yes, it really has. And y'all are. We can't give all the spoilers away in the first couple of minutes, so you'll find out why in a bit. But yes, it is so. We'll just pause. I will turn my do not disturb on. Okay, and then we'll restart. Where was I? So yes, we'll find out in a few minutes exactly why it's been so long in the making. But let's start with the question some people might be wondering. What is the film Invisible? When I introduced you at the beginning, I talked about you being the director and really the star of the film. So what is Invisible?
I think Invisible really began, the journey of Invisible began when Pallavi, who is one of the producers of the film, came to me and said, hey, my friend has an idea to create a documentary about, it wasn't even about fibromyalgia at the time. It was about chronic pain in general. And she said, this friend of mine has fibromyalgia. Do you know what that means? And I said, oh my gosh, Pallavi, my mother has fibromyalgia. And to be perfectly honest, I don't know anything about it. I don't understand it. I don't get it. I watched her over the years struggle, but I have no idea what to do or how to help. I'm completely in. I want to do this film. And that was really the beginning. And the film itself is really, the original intention of the film was to follow 4 women over the course of 2 years and see how fibromyalgia affected their lives and sort of the interpersonal relationships, how it affected their daily life, and to bring awareness and education to both the fibromyalgia community, but also to the general public about what fibromyalgia is. But here's the thing. With every good documentary, it's called chasing the story.
Yeah.
And twists and turns happen along the way that change what a film is. And so what we ended up with, the film that we ended up with, is not the film that we started making.
No, because I actually knew about the film before. I actually knew about the film before you did. Because I had talked to Pallavi's friend, Rose, about her idea before you ever even came on board. So yeah, over the years, it has definitely morphed and evolved, and I think become a better film.
Yeah, when it started, like I said, it was more general chronic pain. And when I came on board, when they got me on board as director, I said, we need to focus this film. We need to focus this on the fibromyalgia community. And I think because Rose had fibromyalgia and because of my mother's connection to fibro, I think I felt that that's where the focus of the film needed to be. And yeah, to say that I learned a lot would be a massive understatement. The first thing that I did was, on every interview, the first question that I asked everyone was, what is fibromyalgia? So in the same way that you're asking me what is invisible, I ask people, well, what is fibromyalgia? And I have to tell you, about the number of people that I asked, I got a different answer from. And as a filmmaker, that was like, wait, what the heck is going on here? You know?
And what do you do with that too, right?
That's
as a filmmaker, right?
As a filmmaker, it was like, well, where should the focus be then? Right? And so I thought, okay, we really are going to delve into the lives of these women and suss it out. Now, something that you should also know is we did a casting call. And in that casting call, we had, of course, had Rose and we had my mother, but we were filling it out with other people. And in that casting call, we put out an ask for men, and no one showed. We could not get a man to come on camera and be a part of the film in casting. We saw lots of ladies, and we're making decisions. And in casting a documentary is not like casting a regular film. It's not like we're having people read lines and, you know, but we had interviews with them, pre-interviews, to see, you know, who might be a good fit. And we also wanted to show a variety within the fibromyalgia community, not only in terms of where they are in the spectrum of health, but also in terms of socioeconomics and race, to show that this is a syndrome that, and I didn't even know at the time it was a syndrome. This is a syndrome that I called it a disease for quite some time, that affects people of all areas and all walks of life. And that was really important as well.
And that's one of the things I'm really proud of with the film, is that it's not just telling like one side of the story. It's telling lots of people, lots of different stories. So how was it for you being a man and having no men show up?
Not surprising.
Yeah.
And, you know, just by the nature of who I am, I'm constantly surrounded by ladies. I think I have lots of friends that are ladies, and my students, I'm a coach as well, as you know, and my students are about 95% female identified. So, I'm good with that. I'm good. I'm down.
Yeah. Do you think it was the vulnerability of, I mean, because guys are in other documentaries. What do you think it was about this? I mean, I have my ideas, but I'm curious what you thought.
I do think it has to do with the vulnerability factor. I do think that there is a stigma in the community for men, even within the fibromyalgia community for
Mm-hmm.
men, of tough it up, man it up, man up. How many times have you been told as a kid to man up? I was told over and over and over again. So I can relate to not wanting to necessarily express that vulnerability on camera. It's not something that men are taught to do. In society, we teach men to suck it up, and it's causing all kinds of problems that we could go down a long rabbit hole of.
That's a whole
But
nother podcast episode.
isn't it though? but that it didn't surprise me. It
Yeah.
really didn't. And at that time anyway, when I was going into the film, I didn't think it was that big of a deal because I thought of it as a woman's syndrome, a woman's disease. I really did, because the statistics that I was given through my research was that it was 80% female, 20% male. Now, over the course of filming, I learned other statistics and other reasons and other factors, but that's what I was told initially. So when we couldn't find a male, I was like, okay, no biggie. This is a female problem. Let's focus on the females.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I think that's also, I mean, playing my woman card here for a minute, but I think that's part of why we haven't had a lot of good answers for fibromyalgia for so long, because women's disease.
Women's disease. And that is, that is actually explored a bit in the film. We talk about a timeline, and Dr. Ginevra talks about it as well in the film, about why that is, sort of the history and how it chronicles over time, and that it is, because it's a woman's disease, it is behind, because it's been perceived as a women's disease. It is behind. Let me clarify that statement.
That's right. We don't want anything out of context here. So you followed, what is it, four or five stories?
Yeah. At first it was 5, and then it became 4 for lots of reasons. As we say in documentary, things shift, things change, and not everyone decides that their story should be out in the world, and so things shift. But yes, basically 4 primary subjects.
That's awesome. And I know, you filmed, we did, I don't know, 2 or 3 interviews. We filmed a coaching session, and I never knew until the end, like, I don't know, were all my scenes on the cutting room floor? And as you tell the story and put the pieces together, I'm sure you have so much more footage than the hour and 15 minutes. And so decisions have to be made, and you have to decide what kind of story you want to tell and what pieces fit into that.
Yeah, when you get to the editing process of a documentary, you have hundreds of hours of material to go through and to find the right story. And the film could have ended up being 5 different films, to be honest. It became, well, what story are we telling and why? And I had to really dig into, as a filmmaker and as an artist, what was important to me from my perception of what to share, but that was also in alignment with the fibromyalgia community, and where I, as a filmmaker, wanted to see the film, the fibromyalgia community essentially move to, essentially learn from, essentially grow from. That was really important, that it be something that, and for me, something that was positive and something that was affirming and something that would put people into action. It has a call to action about it. And that was really important to me as a filmmaker, that it's evoking some change in some way, that it's asking people to step out of their comfort zone, move forward, shift, grow, learn, do. That's partly who I am. I'm a coach like you. This is what we do, right?
It is.
We hold space for people to do all the things I just mentioned.
Yeah.
But also that's also my point of view as a filmmaker, because that's who I am, right? And as a filmmaker, you can't but help but bring your point of view to something, or it's not truly art, right? So that's the other part of it, is I'm creating many things. We're creating something that is for the fibromyalgia community, for people to learn about fibromyalgia, but it's also a piece of art. And so we had to look at it through all of those lenses.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And so how did you decide then what pieces to include? What were I don't know, what was your thought process?
So here's what happened. As we are filming, we would edit as we go, by the way. So we had a film, basically, and we were still trying to find pieces, and we'd say, oh, you know what's missing is X, you know what's missing is Y, let's go film that. And it also was determined, and why it took so many years to make, for those of you out there that have been like, oh my gosh, this film, why did it take so long, is that we would raise some money, we would film a little bit more, we would run out of money, we'd have to raise some more money, we would film a bit more, we would run out of money, we would edit, we'd run out of money. It all came back to that, right? And this, because it's not a sexy topic, you know, for most people, other than your audience, it's sexy as hell for your audience.
That's right.
But in general, like you said about it being years behind, that goes back to the financial dollar as well of research, right? Because it's not something that generally people think about on a daily basis, it was hard to raise money for. So it took us some time. But as we're going along and we're filming and trying things, I kept saying, I have that symptom. Well, that's interesting. I have that symptom sometimes. Oh, that comes and goes for me. Oh, I used to have that syndrome, that symptom, but I took dairy out of my diet. That's interesting. And then I got on a call with you, one of the calls with you, and you were a huge catalyst. This is why this is 8 years in the making. You were a huge, huge catalyst, because you told me, you were the first person to tell me that there was a genetic component.
Yep. You're 8 times more likely to develop fibromyalgia if you have a first-degree relative, like, I don't know, a mother with fibro.
Ding, 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 ding. So I heard that, and on camera, I'm processing that. And I thought, that's really interesting. And Paula V came up to me afterward and said, I think you should go on camera and get tested. Now, we had put the camera on me in interviews before because it was the remote interview. We had no intention of using my side of anything ever, just FYI. I was never supposed to be in this film. That was not the film. And then I went to Dr. Melissa Congdon in San Francisco, outside in the Bay Area, and was diagnosed on camera. And that was a turning point, a life change moment. You know, I think that all of your audience obviously knows what that moment is. It's mixed things, of course. For me, it was, for most people, it's relief, I think.
It was for me, for sure. Yeah. Thank God I finally know what's wrong.
And for me, I have to say, it did not feel like relief. I think because I had been studying it for so many years at that point, it had been like 4 years, and filming people and watching people and seeing sort of both the troubles and the also the joy in many ways of I know that sounds weird to say the joy of fibromyalgia, but the joy of recovery, the joy of connecting with other people in the community. There are many ways in which you can flip that coin, is what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
But the initial response was, oh, you know what?
Insert bad word here.
insert bad word. I'm going to have this for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
I already had it.
And you knew that when you got your diagnosis. A lot of us get the diagnosis and then learn that piece.
Yeah.
So I bet that those words landed a lot heavier on you.
It felt like a life sentence. It felt like, oh, you've been sort of branded now with a life sentence. And it was overwhelming in the moment. Also, I realized, oh my gosh, this is on camera.
Right. I have to say that was very brave of you.
But I also have to say that it brought a lot of pieces of my life together. It made me understand things so much deeper. Why did I have brain fog from time to time? I thought that I might, this is truth, I thought that I might have had early onset Alzheimer's at one point, or dementia.
I hear that often. Yeah.
I thought at other points, why, like I said about the dairy, why did I have so many stomach issues? Why did sometimes when I go to the gym, did I hurt in a way that normal people didn't seem to? I thought maybe that was I was a dancer in my youth. So I thought maybe this was old dance injuries. And I do believe, going back to our conversation about being a man, I had been taught my whole life to suck it up. Any pain that I had, suck it up. And so a part of me also felt like, well, this is just how people feel. I didn't know everyone didn't feel like that. I also have a morning practice, a yoga practice, a meditation practice. I eat incredibly healthy. All of this, I realize now, I had been course correcting my entire life. Mm-hmm. And the things that actually help you with fibromyalgia, I was doing. Part of that is because of my dance background. Part of that, I know my body really, really well. So that's part of it. Not well enough to know that I had fibro, but well enough to know how to manage it.
Right. Basically. No, if I feel this way, here's how I can make that better. Right. Yeah. Like that.
I always went and looked for the root.
Yeah.
I always went and dove into, okay, well, if I have this stomach issue, what is causing it and how can I adjust it? And I did it holistically, so there was always this exploration of my own body and of my own mind and of my own spirit that I think really played into me being healthy for the most part. Now, you have to understand, I can also in that moment, things were flashing back. Moments were flashing back of those times when I was in bed for a week and never understood exactly why I got so sick. I thought I had a terrible flu. I didn't realize I was in bed for 10 days because I was having a fibromyalgia flare until that moment. And then in that moment, it was like, oh, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, that was a fibromyalgia flare. Wild.
Yeah.
Wild.
Yeah. And you guys, this is the punchline of the film. And so we have been keeping this secret of Nick's diagnosis forever. So how does it feel to finally talk about that or to hold that secret?
This is going to sound really strange, but I came out of the closet as gay, in the late 80s, and I kept that secret for quite some time. It felt this feels a bit like coming out of the closet for a second time. I know that sounds strange, but when the film, it was like this relief because I could now talk about it. I've been holding it in quietly within family members and whatnot. It's like, again, layers of coming out, right? Within family members and whatnot. But now for the entire world to know, on one hand, again, it goes back to that relief. There is relief there. And on the other hand, yes, I am now sort of branded with this lifelong thing. And interestingly, I've already experienced my first set of sort of discrimination around it.
Oh, really?
Well, I went to get a life insurance policy. And they would give me life insurance, but they won't give me disability insurance.
Yep.
Because of fibromyalgia.
Yep.
Despite being completely healthy, having no other underlying conditions whatsoever, they wouldn't give it. They wouldn't give it to me. And I was like, wow, okay, my life has changed. My life has changed.
That's interesting. I had a friend who was an insurance agent, so we talked about that, and I discovered that little thing. And on one hand, I think in some ways that makes sense, right? Because a fibro person is more likely, it's a risk factor, right? Yeah. Like if you're a smoker or, doing other whatever things, only this isn't something we can choose to do or not do.
Right. That's very different. You can put down the cigarette, you know what I mean? Like, yes, there's addiction, yes, blah, 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 but it's ultimately choice. We don't have a choice.
Nope.
We don't have a choice.
Yeah.
So that was shocking to me. That was the first moment of sort of, wow, okay. It became more real in a sense. And I will say this, it's the greatest gift for me to have gotten the diagnosis, however, because now I understand. And now I know what to do. I mean, how privileged am I when I sit with it? How privileged am I to not only have stayed off the symptoms for so long because of my access to healthcare, my access to things like meditation, yoga, healthy foods, but how privileged was I to have 4 years of knowledge from the leading experts in the entire world on the syndrome that then I would be diagnosed with. I mean, most people don't have that experience. Let's be real.
No,
right?
Not even after we're diagnosed.
No. And, it's also very interesting for me because I have been in conversation with people and them not knowing over this 8-year period, and now, the 4 years since I've been diagnosed, and they'll say something about fibromyalgia, like, in random strangers kind of situation. This has already happened to me. And somebody will say, oh, that's not really real. That syndrome happened to me. I'm sitting there and I'm like, well, actually, I created a documentary about it. And then I spewed out facts, right? and then I took a deep breath in because I realized, oh, they're talking about me.
Yeah. Right.
It's no longer my subjects, which of course I was very protective of my subjects in the film. But when you become the subject, then it's like, woo, oh my goodness, this is even more personal. This is even more like knife in the stomach when you hear something like this.
And you can't defend yourself in that same way that you were ready to fight based on, the people that you knew. But when it's you that they're, dismissing, basically, it's a different thing.
Dismissing, it's like, it just feels so much more emotional. Mm-hmm. I will say, thankfully, because of the film, I've got a lot of facts to back me up. I got a lot of, information here to throw back at them. But I can't believe, and this is the whole reason for the film, that we're still having to do this in 2023, that we're still having to have this conversation. It's absolutely absurd. And yet it makes a case for why the film is important and why the film had to happen and why the film took 7 years to make. And now year number 8, getting it out into the world.
Yeah, I know it's been a long time in the making, and it's been so fun to be part of that journey too, watching as you guys would all learn new things and, meet a new person and the story would take off in another direction. It was so fun because it's like the film is its own living being almost, and it's growing and changing in its own ways.
Yeah.
Apart from you almost.
It's what we call a creative baby.
Yes.
You have your creative baby and, you're feeding it, you're helping it grow in its way. And then it sort of takes off on its own. And there's a part of you that's like, wait, I'm holding on to the baby. It's still a baby. Oh no, it's a teenager. Oh no, it's now an adult out into the world. I want to ask you, if you don't mind, what was your experience like being a part of the film?
Oh, it was awesome. I loved it. I mean, for one thing, I didn't know everything that you filmed everywhere else, right? So there was a certain amount of mystery, even watching it for the first time. That was probably the most unique experience, was knowing so much about the film, being part of the film, hearing, being part since the beginning, but also not knowing what I'm about to watch on the screen. It's like, I know this, but I don't know this. Which direction did they go? And I was just so proud of the decisions you guys made and the story that you ended up telling. It's the story that I would want to tell. Right? Because it doesn't ignore the hard parts of fibromyalgia because it can be very, very disabling for some people.
Yeah.
And it also doesn't leave you there, right? Because there is hope and there is a lot that can be done. And it explores that challenge that we have. There's one point in the film where you ask me, what about the people who don't have the resources or who can't afford to pay for these things out of pocket? And I'm watching my face and watching the film and remembering that moment and thinking, I'm trying to find a nice way to say, well, it sucks to be you.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, that's
there,
just real.
yeah, it's and I love that you guys showed all of that. And another favorite part of the film for me is when you had two doctors give differing information back to back. I
Mhm.
thought that was such a you didn't have to say anything about it, but it was such a brilliant example of what we go through with fibromyalgia and how our own doctors don't even can't come to agreement.
Yeah, I thought that was really important to show. Like that was an important moment for me because of, as I was saying, as the filmmaker, as I was learning things, I was getting conflicting information. So it was really difficult to create a film about it. The other really difficult thing about creating a film about fibromyalgia is the very obvious, it's an invisible illness. People look healthy. And for a film that's about people that are ill, for many sick, some not all, obviously at different levels of the spectrum, to show that it needs, because film is a visual medium, right? It's
Right.
visual storytelling. So how do I tell these stories of something visual that's internal, that you can't see? It was very tricky. It was very tricky. And we did the best we could with that. And I think we did a good job, but it was certainly a challenge in the making of the film.
Sure, sure. Because it's not like you can, you know, see the kid with no hair because they have cancer, or the,
Right.
the casts or the whatever, like there's nothing to see. And even when we're in a fibro flare and feeling our worst, like there's maybe you can tell there's a change of the expression on somebody's face or how they hold their body, but it's so subtle that unless somebody is dealing with that kind of pain themselves and understands that, probably not going to notice.
I often say to my husband, if I'm having a flare, which is not frequent, but on occasion, yeah, like it's that degrees of flare I've come to
Yep.
learn about. You know what I mean? Like I know a flare when I'm in bed and can't get out of that, I get, but I'll have days where I don't feel as good, right? Like this is sort
Hmm.
of the what it is. Who am I telling the expert? I'm telling the expert about it. Why am I telling the expert? Anyway, but I look at my husband, Michael, and I'll say, do I look like holy hell? And he's like, no, you look exactly the same. But on the inside, I'm not feeling it, right?
Yeah.
It's so trippy. But again, I'm so grateful because now I have words and I have knowledge and I have a community of people who understand what I'm going through in a way that I did not before I started this film.
Yeah, for sure. And that's so important for all of us, that community, knowing that you're not alone. So you listening to us right now, you need to watch the film. I promise it will make you feel less alone. You will recognize yourself in the film. It's also a great tool to share with the people in your life who don't really understand. I think that's probably one of my favorite things about the film, is that it's such a great, great tool to share with others. So speaking of your husband, how was he through the filming of all of this and you learning you have fibromyalgia and sharing that with him?
Yeah, so when this tells you how long it's been. When I started the film, making the film, we weren't together. So
I
yeah,
didn't know that. I wasn't sure what your
yeah.
story was with Michael. That's awesome.
We've been together 7 years. It's been 8 since the beginning. So
Yeah.
it was at the very beginning that you know I think he was in uh, not dissimilar to me, had both responses, had the response of in disbelief that this was happening. Like it's kind of a crazy story when you think about it, right? If you were just like to do the sort of what they call the film log line, guy goes to direct a film, about fibromyalgia and realizes he has fibromyalgia. I mean, that's pretty like, what? And so I think there was like a, wow, I can't believe this is happening aspect to him, but also a great compassion, because he too then got to see, oh, this is what he's talking about. Oh, this makes sense. Oh, this is why you have to eat this way. Oh, this is why. And it actually in many ways deepened our relationship, because I was able to express to him those feelings. And it really deepened my relationship with my mother.
Oh, I bet. Yeah.
To be able to have conversations with her about how she's feeling, and to understand, for her to have somebody in the family who truly understands, it's, next level in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm not sure you can really fully understand fibro unless you have fibro.
Yeah.
As much as my husband is as supportive as he is, and he's amazing. I love you, Michael. I know you're listening, but there is that he's never going to fully get it, because I don't think you can. I don't think I even fully got it until I was diagnosed. I know that sounds weird, but even as the filmmaker, I still put this other thing on it, and then when you're in it, you can tune in to understand what's happening on the inside.
Right.
It's a gift. I know people will think that's crazy for me to say, but I see it as a gift.
I absolutely do too. I mean, when I think of all the things that would not be in my life if it weren't for fibromyalgia, y'all, we wouldn't be here right now doing this.
We wouldn't be having this conversation. I wouldn't
know you. Yeah.
There's lots of people I wouldn't. Honestly, I probably wouldn't have been a meditation and a yoga teacher, which means I wouldn't have been a coach, which means I wouldn't have helped all the people that I helped. There's reasons that I did that. And so much of it now I can look back and say, oh my gosh, it was tied to fibromyalgia and I had no idea. That's why I was doing what I was doing. I mean, it's fascinating. It's completely shifted my life without me even knowing that it had.
That's so funny. That is so interesting. So aside from the obvious biggie surprise of, hello, you have fibromyalgia too, what else surprised you as you were making the film? Like information that you learned about fibro, or maybe things with your mom? I don't know. What surprised you?
I think the lack of access to affordable healthcare and healthcare providers that really pay for what people with fibromyalgia most need. I think that was truly, truly shocking to me. And again, that goes to my privilege of being, an upper middle class guy who has lots of access. And I can afford to pay for things that other people with fibro cannot. And that was really shocking. And then the second most shocking thing to me, which is tied, is the lack of research. I can't tell you how difficult it was, because when you do a documentary, particularly a documentary like this, you spend the first year in R&D, research and development. The lack of research, the lack of studies for me to read, the lack of, I read what was there, right? But it was so few and far between. And of course, I found out later in the making of the film, that that's connected to the drug companies, and that drug companies fund studies and they don't want that, right? So that was just shocking. That was shocking to me. So I think those are like the primary shockers for sure.
Yeah. And, those are the things that continually, I shouldn't be surprised because I've been doing this for a little bit, but those are the things that still get me too. All the things that I find most helpful for my own fibromyalgia, keeping it in remission, is stuff insurance doesn't cover.
Yeah. Same.
So, yeah.
That's the reason I've been so successful, honestly. Why it has been basically in remission. Yes, I have moments, but for the most part, that's why. And it's just so frustrating. It's just so frustrating because you don't know what to do the system is so big, you don't know how to change. Now, with that, I also have to hold hope. I can hold both things, right? One in one hand and one in the other, and have a belief that there are people out there that are fighting for it. There will be change, and things like this film drama that draw more attention to it will hopefully help that.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. You know, you mentioned that so much of it is tied to the pharmaceutical companies. For those of you who aren't aware, those are the companies that are paying for most of the research to be done. And they're researching these different things because they're looking for, new drugs they can make, right? But researching something like acupuncture or nutrition or mindfulness, there's no sexy drugs we can make out of that. There's no big money in that.
There's no benefit to them. So why would they fund it? And that's
Exactly.
who funds them.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Exactly. So thank you so much for everything that you're doing, by the way. Yeah, you getting the film out there for us to be able to share and get more awareness and more people to see. That's part of helping.
Thank you for your huge part in it, not only in front of the screen, but behind the screen, and really for being an advocate for the film for so long, and for the work you're doing here on this podcast and in your coaching programs. It's so vital and so important that all of that we're just talking about, you cover in your programs and on this podcast in a way that the pharmaceutical companies won't. So I really want to say thank you for what you're doing.
Oh, thank you so much. And you're absolutely welcome. We got to do what we can do, right? All of us, right? If we can do our little part. So for you listening, your part in this is to share the film, right?
Yeah.
That's how you can help us get the word out and potentially help, forward research and things like that, by people becoming more aware. And so speaking of watching the film and sharing the film, we have a couple of events coming up in the next couple of weeks from when this is released. So let's talk about those. The first one that's coming up is we are actually going to see the film on a big screen.
Woohoo!
Y'all know I missed the New York premiere because I was stuck in my bed with vertigo. So this is my do-over premiere. But we are going to be holding that on Saturday, May 13th in the evening. If you guys are anywhere near Portland, Oregon, we would love to have you come. As of recording this, we do still have tickets. Go to Invisible Film PDX. That's the airport code for Portland, by the way. InvisibleFilmPDX.com, and you'll be able to get tickets through there. Second up, because I know most of you listening are not near Portland, we are also doing a virtual screening the following weekend, May 20th. And there is a link to that in that same URL where you can watch virtually with us and have a live Q&A afterwards. So you can ask questions about the film. So to wrap up, Nick, two things. First off, other than those two events, how are people going to be able to watch the film?
Good. So coming up shortly, and there'll be an announcement about how they'll be able to, but you can also do your own community screening. If you have a group, if you have people, you can do that right now. If you go onto the website for the film, you can click right on it. There's this really super easy way to do it called Kinema. We've partnered with them to be able to host screenings anywhere that you are, whether it is a live screening or a virtual screening with friends. There's ways to do that right now. And then, of course, there'll be additional ways coming. Stay tuned. I know that Tami will keep you informed, but you can also go to the website for the film and check it out there as well. And on our socials. Follow Invisible Film on the social, because we also always post about any screenings that are happening near you, or if you want to host one, how to do it. There, we've got videos to help you, and future ways to screen in your own home that will be coming shortly as well.
Yes, we are working on getting things out on all the streaming platforms. And when that is finally ready, these things take time, y'all.
They
So
do.
once that's finally ready, that is where we'll be announcing that. Of course, I'll mention it here on the podcast, but you'll be probably see it on the Invisible Film social media first, I would bet.
Yes, for sure. And Tami, I can't wait to see you all dressed up, all dolled up, as we used to say,
Oh
for
yeah.
for the premiere. And more than likely, I'm going to end up watching you watch the film.
Oh,
Instead of watching
I
the
bet.
film, I'll watch you. You know, I have to tell you, at the New York premiere, I started watching everyone watch the film, and I was like, okay, stop, take a breath. Just watch the film and enjoy what you created. But now that I've done that once, now I'm going to be watching everyone else watch the film and watch the reactions.
Totally. I know I've told you this before, but I'm a little afraid to see my face that big.
It's very strange. I'm not going to lie. It's very strange because I would say, oh, don't worry about it. But then there's my face up there too.
So anyway, I hope all of you can join us in one way or another. And then the last thing I want to ask you, Nick, because I know every single person is listening. Oh, by the way, before I get to that, y'all, we will have all those links we were just talking about on today's show notes page. It's fibromyalgiapodcast.com/108. So if I haven't mentioned that, I wanted to throw that in there. So what I know everybody is wondering, Nick, is how does Nick manage his fibromyalgia?
Oh, wow. Okay. So I get up every morning and I have a practice, a yoga asana morning practice. It's short. It's not long. That sounds like it's forever long. No, it's just some movement, the body. I do a breathwork practice, a pranayama breathwork practice, and I meditate. That's the very first thing that I do every single day. And really what that does is sets me up for success. It brings me back to center. It takes me out of any sort of, when you wake up achy, I move, which I think is so important. I sit and come to a mindfulness space. It takes me out of any sympathetic nervous system, fight or flight response that may be happening in my body, and takes me into the parasympathetic nervous system and allows me to come back to myself. That's first and foremost. And then during the course of the day, I eat healthy. Honestly, the diet has been huge, which then also helps with what? Sleep. Getting sleep is probably the most important thing. I have noticed that the flares, when I have them, which are minor flares now, I haven't had a major one in years, but when I do have something, it's related to lack of sleep. Yes. And because I travel so much, I'm going to be traveling, up to Portland to see you all for this premiere, right? I travel frequently, at least twice a month I travel. I've learned that I have to regulate my sleep. And when that happens, I'm fine. Those are the primary ways: through diet, through this exercise and mindfulness, and through regulated sleep. When those things are happening, I don't have to worry about anything else ultimately. But if something is dysregulated, then it's acupuncture, which has helped me tremendously. I know it doesn't work for everyone for their fibro. It does for me, very much so. Mm-hmm. And massage. Those are the two things that I splurge on for myself. The other is daily. And then the massage and the acupuncture tend to be maintenance, really help me maintain over time. Or if there's an issue, I go and address it with those two, depending on what the issue is.
So how often do you go, like, as part of the maintenance for your massage and acupuncture?
It's interesting because it used to be more than it is now. I don't need to go as much because I used to live in New York City. That's just the truth.
When I was in New York in December, we had, the three of us who were there together, had this conversation about how can a fibro person live in New York City? Just all the sounds and the smells and the just sensory overload all the time, 24/7. Like, how do you do it?
There's a lot of stimulus. And I didn't even realize how much until I got out. It's like the fish in the bowl, right? The fish is swimming in the bowl and doesn't realize it's in a fish bowl until, then you put it in the ocean. It's like, oh, it was like that. I was so in the fish bowl, I didn't even realize how sort of fried my nervous system was, how on fire I was until I got out of it. And so then I needed far more. I mean, I was going almost weekly to acupuncture, almost at least once a month for a massage. And now that I live in a calmer space in California with laid back people, yay, it's far less. It's far less. I would say, maybe once a month now versus every week.
And then when you are noticing something that's starting to get a little out of control, you just crank that up and go more often?
Yeah. In Los Angeles, I have my favorite acupuncturist, Dr. Q. Give me a shout out for Dr. Q, who is a healer, an absolute healer. And, going to him, he's so helpful. If you haven't tried acupuncture and you have the financial means, give it a try. Give it a try. Some insurance will cover it. Some,
mine
not
covers
all.
a certain number of sessions, like I don't know, 10, 15,
10.
something like that. Yeah.
I get 10. The first 10, which when I'm in maintenance, that's okay. If I have a problem, boom, that's gone.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. And then the last question I want to ask you about how you manage your stuff. You said you eat healthy. That can mean so many things to so many different people. So what does that mean for you?
Yeah, I know it does. It means so many different things. I have to be honest. I've always sort of avoided this because during the making of the film, when we started the film, I was a vegan. And since making of the film, which is why I kind of avoid the question, thanks, Tami, I avoid the question, is because I've shifted since then. Since the fibromyalgia diagnosis, I've shifted. That's something I've actually course corrected a bit. And I brought the fish back into my diet and reduced gluten. I didn't worry about gluten before, but I didn't realize that gluten was something that can really trigger fibromyalgia. But then once I took out gluten, I realized, oh, that donut was triggering me. No wonder I felt like crap after eating that donut. I didn't know. It was vegan. It was a vegan donut. When I realized...
So it was clearly healthy.
Clearly healthy, because all vegan food is healthy, not, right? So I had to sort of readjust. So now I do eat some fish, and I just really cut out the majority of gluten. Not all gluten. I live in this planet. I live in this world. And I do like a donut. Sorry, I'm going to eat a donut every now and again. I try to go gluten-free donuts, but if I can't, yes, I'm still going to have one. But I also know then what that means. What am I going to feel like afterwards? And, how am I going to then manage that? How am I going to choose to adjust accordingly, maybe the rest of my diet for the day or what have you?
Right, right. And how much power is there in that to actually be making the choice, even if you're choosing to have a flare-up of symptoms versus waking up one morning and wondering, where did this come from?
Yeah, that statement, knowledge is power.
Yeah.
That is the truth. And that is one of the reasons why I'm so grateful to have done this film. I mean, talk about a gift. This film is, at the end of the day, this film is a gift to myself without even realizing I was sending it.
Right. That's so cool. That's so cool. So as we wrap up, I'd love to give you the chance to just say a few words to that person listening, just out of your experience in making the film, the people that you've talked to, all the experts you got to meet. What would you say to the person who is listening?
First, I want to say thank you to anyone who has already watched the film, who has supported the film, who has donated to the film. This was a community of people creating this film. While we may be called the filmmakers, it's your film as well. You all helped us create it. You're in it. The number of people I interviewed that made the cutting room floor that weren't in the film, thank you to all of them. Thank you to the donations. We got so many donations and investors to make this film happen. So I want to say thank you, first and foremost. That is just got to lead with the gratitude. And then for anybody out there who's considering watching the film, knowledge is power. It goes back to that. And the power, not only in your own fibromyalgia and treating your own fibromyalgia, but also in other people in your life watching it. Because the more knowledgeable they are about your fibro, the more they're going to be able to help you, and the better your relationship is going to be with them so they can understand you. So those times when maybe you can't come to that family event, or maybe you need a little more time, And right now they may not understand that, but after watching the film, they'll have a greater knowledge and a greater understanding and wisdom about what fibromyalgia really means. So watch the film, y'all. That's what I'm going to say.
Yes, I will second that strongly. It really is a wonderful film. Even if I wasn't involved, I would be telling y'all to watch it. It really is the film that our community has been wanting and needing. I think this is the first full-length fibro documentary to cover all of what fibro really is. Like I said, not focusing in on one person's story or one type of treatment or anything like that, but just the bigger picture of fibromyalgia. And I think that's really what we've been needing. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome.
Well, thanks so much for being here, Nick. We'll go ahead and wrap it up there. And everybody else, just stay tuned for a few more minutes. I'm going to share a little bit more how you can watch the film, how you can be involved with that, and we'll have our listener shout out. And that wraps up my interview with filmmaker Nick Demos. We hope you can join us at either the Portland or the virtual film screening. If you've already seen the film, join us to learn more during the live Q&A sessions, and bring your friends and family to a screening with you so they can understand fibromyalgia and you a little bit better. If you haven't seen the film yet, you need to. We have our live in-person screening of Invisible on the big screen, Saturday, May 13th. Dr. Ginevra and I will be handing out hugs, we'll be signing books, and we're giving away goodies. You'll also be able to meet Nick and the other filmmakers personally. This is in Portland, Oregon, and therefore we are holding it with a Portland dress code. That means just about anything goes. Dr. Ginevra and I, of course, will be all dolled up, as Nick said, for the red carpet, but you can feel free to dress up with us, wear your Unipiper outfit, or whatever else you're most comfortable in. Tickets are selling quickly, so go to invisiblefilmpdx.com to get yours today. If you can't make the Portland event, or even if you can, consider joining us for our virtual screening the following weekend on Saturday, May 20th. We will have a group watch party of the film with a live chat during the film and a Q&A with Dr. Ginevra and myself following the screening. Go to today's show notes page for the link to buy tickets. fibromyalgiapodcast.com/108. For our listener shout out today, I want to share a few comments we've received about the film. Allie says, Invisible is an amazing film. I absolutely loved it. I had my family watching it with me so they can understand what we go through. Thank you. And this is from Marcy. She says, bravo! I can barely see my keyboard to type this due to the tears falling. The film Invisible is so powerful. I feel so seen and understood. It's so difficult to explain to people, family, loved ones, what it's like as someone who experiences this chronic pain and illness. Thank you for this work and for this love. And from another person on Instagram, she says, I rented Invisible for my parents and my partner, and each time watching it, I appreciated it more. I am so thankful someone made fibromyalgia less invisible by talking about it and how real it is. And as Nick and I talked about in the interview, Invisible will be coming to your favorite streaming platform. These things do take time. As I record this, we are still in the process of ironing out all the details. So by the time you hear this, take a look. It might be available. Also, make sure that you go to today's show notes page so that you can follow the film on social media so that you can be notified when there are new screenings or when the streaming is available. Again, it's fibromyalgiapodcast.com/108. See you back here next time.